stocks are down, but corn futures finishing near the highs of the day. Sharon Everson at the NYMEX right now with that angle. Over to you, Sharon.
Maria, corn futures are up nearly 2% on this session, and we do see some new reports coming out about a tour of the Midwest Farm Belt. It's showing severe damage there, and that's not really a huge surprise, but it really just underscores how much of a toll this drought has taken on the crops in the Midwest. We are looking at corn prices here that are rallying for the session, and of course many traders say that the reason why we're looking at a commodity bull run here is largely due to grains, largely due to corn prices. Back to you.
All right, thank you so much, Sharon. The list is growing longer. More governors and groups are pushing the federal government to waive what's called the ethanol mandate. Right now, gas producers are required to put a certain amount of corn-based ethanol into fuel.
And with the worst drought in a generation pushing corn up another 60% since June, it's making both gasoline and corn that much more expensive. Let's talk about both sides of this issue. Jeff Cooper from the Renewable Fuels Association says taking corn out of gas is not the answer to lower fuel and feed prices, while Robert Bryce of the Manhattan Institute says it is just common sense to drop the mandate and not turn food into fuel. Jeff, let's start with you. I mean, we do have higher prices for both corn and gasoline. Why not just drop the mandate at least temporarily?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. And I guess in response to your question, you know, we feel like the governors are being misled by the chicken producers in their states. Waiving the ethanol program really isn't going to solve anything. It's not going to result in much of a reduction in corn price, and it's just unnecessary. There is flexibility within the program itself that puts downward pressure on corn prices and allows refiners to meet this year's obligation with gallons that they blended in excess of their requirements in previous years.
Well, how do you balance then the goal of energy independence against the desire for low food prices?
Well, I think, you know, when you look at the impact of corn prices on retail food prices, certainly we are looking at record high corn prices right now. But by the time that works through to the retail level, the impact is almost imperceptible. You know, USDA is projecting 3% food inflation this year, which is right in line with the 10-year average of 2.9%. Next year, when the impact of the drought works through the retail level, they're looking at 3.5% food inflation.
All right.
So if you spend $100 a week on groceries, that's about an extra 50 cents due to the drought, not the RFS.
Robert, what about that? Are we being misled that dropping the mandate would drop prices as well?
Well, it's clear that if there were a reduction in the mandate right now, it will not have an immediate effect on grain prices. But I completely disagree with Mr. Cooper from the ethanol lobby. There have been at least 16 studies that have been done that show that the corn ethanol mandates in the U.S. are affecting grain prices. Those studies have been done by everyone from Purdue University to the World Bank. And just
how much have they added to grain prices? How much have they added to grain prices, the ethanol mandate? Robert?
Well, it varies by the different studies, but let me point out that there was a study that was done last year by a number of groups, including the World Trade Organization, International Monetary Fund, International Food Policy Research Institute, the UN, when they discussed the link between food prices and biofuels, and they said that when food prices are volatile, or the countries that have biofuel mandates, I'm quoting, should adjust policies that stimulate biofuel production or consumption when food supplies are endangered. It's clear we have record high corn prices, and this is in part being driven by the corn ethanol scam. It's one of the biggest robberies of American taxpayers in modern history.
That adjustment is happening.
All right, go ahead, Jeff.
I was going to say that adjustment that Mr. Bryce is talking about is happening. There's flexibility built into the program to allow the markets to respond. We've already seen the ethanol industry reduce production by 15% compared to where we were at the beginning of this year, and that's in response to higher corn prices. You know, we've got nearly 24 ethanol plants sitting idle today because it just isn't profitable, and that's going to happen, you know, irrespective of the RFS.
But is it really a good idea to be diverting fuel into food? I mean, a lot of debate about this, and people are wondering, with food shortages, why are we using fuel?
Well, it isn't. I would respond by saying it isn't a diversion. Yes, we're using more grain for ethanol today than we have in the past, but we're growing more. We're growing significantly more. And even though this is going to be a short crop this year, we're still looking at the 8th largest crop in U.S. history. And it's also important to remember this is a global market. The corn market is global in nature, and we're looking at the 2nd largest world corn crop. just slightly behind last year's crop.
All right, gentlemen, we must go at this point, unfortunately, but we'll wait for the EPA to decide on this, and maybe we'll talk about this again in the future. Thank you for joining us.